would just like now to ask Betsy Graves if she will introduce our program for the evening.
I think you're in for a real treat tonight. We have 3 generations of the McFarland Goudy family. We're going to talk about the history of their family in the Clarks Cove area. We have Marie McFarland Naylor, her son Mike Naylor, and his wife BeeBee Naylor, and Ryan Naylor, their son, who is a sophomore in the academy. So, I know some of you have a chance to look at the pictures that they brought, but afterwards, really take a look at them because they're pretty cool. So, I'll turn it over to you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, tonight we're going to be giving a brief Goudy history of the family, starting when they settled here in 1760. Much of this is from stories passed down from generation to generation over the years. Some have been published in books on the history of the Goudy family. Much of it cannot be proven or disproven given the years that have passed. But we have taken what we have learned from all the sources we have found to make this as accurate as possible, but it is a work in progress. We learn something new every time we find a new source regarding the family. In order to try to make it less confusing, we are just going to do a direct line starting with the first settlers to the area. Most of the Goudys had at least 6 or more children, and we are not going to get into all of those. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to my son Ryan, and he'll start with the first several generations.
Do you want the lights down or do you want to?
Whatever you got.
Yes, please. Thank
So, we'll start with the first Amos Goudy settled here. He was born in 1705 in Marblehead, Massachusetts. He had 2 wives. His first wife, Marie McFarland of York, died shortly after their marriage, and they had no children. He remained single until he married Mercy Booker in December of 1739, also of York, with whom he had 2 sons and 4 daughters. Amos and Mercy moved here from York with their 6 children in 1760. They would be my 8th great-grandparents. His occupation is listed as a mariner and farmer. While we will never know the exact reason for the move to Harrington, as it was then known, historians have speculated that it has to do with the fact that they were unhappy with the forms of worship in York. During this time, several families who were neighbors in York also moved to Bristol and the surrounding area. However, given that he had sued and won settlements against at least 7 people in York for trespass and death, he may have decided it was safer to leave town before they drove him out. Most of the cases seem to be that while Amos Goudy was out to sea, beginning after the death of his first wife, his neighbors thought that they could take what they wanted from his farm. When he returned home and discovered this, he took legal action. The first case was in 1736. This case was dismissed as neither party showed up. The next cases, however, Amos did appear, and over the years, between 1736 and 1760, he won approximately 350 pounds from these lawsuits. He originally bought 80 acres of land in what was then known as Harrington, now Walpole, from an Isaac Dupee of Boston for the sum of 40 pounds. This land bordered the Damascotta River and was opposite Pleasant Cove in Booth Bay. He moved his family and belongings up from York via a fishing sloop. This land is located in what we now call Clarks Cove. Here, he built a small log house and a barn for the cattle. The house was intended to be a temporary dwelling until a more suitable house could be built. At this time, Amos also started a grist mill, which is located which was located on the stream flowing into the Damascotta River near Goudy Mill Bridge, what we now call Clarks Cove Bridge. This mill was a tidal mill and proved to be very important in the development of the new settlement. In several stories in the family papers, this grist mill is called a sawmill. According to the inventory of his estate, it's listed as a grist mill and not a sawmill. The inhabitants of the new township could have lived comfortably for a time in log homes, but they would have had to have a way to grind their corn and grain for making bread immediately after settling. A visitor in the early 1900s described the Clark's Cove landscape the following way. Standing upon the summit of the hill where the old Carlisle house is seated and overlooking the broad undulating valley and the glittering waters of the Damascotta River and the Goudy Mill Pond, the environing landscape and the waterscape that reaches the faraway horizon is most entrancing to the beholder. Descending the hill to the spot where the old mills were seated, the rustic Goudy Bridge is seen. This old stone arched bridge spans the stream upon which the mills were built, and just below it, the observer can see the foundation stones where the wheels were placed. Here, beneath the waters of the stream, when the tides are out, may be seen some of the bed of timbers and wheel seats of the mills, whose rumbling stones, when grinding the yellow corn, resounded through the surrounding forest and sent 1,000 voices chattering over the hills. Such memorials are silent reminders of the enterprise and activity of the old days when the township was new. Amos Goudy did not live long after moving to Harrington. He drowned in the mill pond in May of 1765. The information we have been able to find says he was working on a flat-bottom boat below his mill. So, given his previous occupation as a mariner, it is likely he was one of the first boat builders in the area. It does not appear that Amos was ever able to build a more permanent house. The list of his assets at the time of his death only valued his house at £1, 4 shillings and 4 pence, while his barn was valued at £13, 6 shillings and 9 pence. So it appears his animals had better living quarters than his family. After his death, his wife and one minor child are rumored to have moved in with one of her daughters and son-in-law. They, along with her 2 sons, Amos Jr. and John, built her a cape on the hill overlooking Clark's Cove that is now owned by Miss Bertha Mason, across from the Walpole fire plant. Mercy Booker Goudy remarried the first time. Deeds indicate she sold the land to her son-in-law and daughter. Records indicate that this is the location of the final resting place of Amos Goudy and 2 other Goudys. He was originally buried on the homestead, but when water threatened his grave, he was moved to higher ground. It is said Mercy Goudy would remarry 2 more times, but is believed to be buried next to her first husband, Amos, along with her son, John, who was never married and who was a military man. We have not been able to uncover any written records of this, but it is written that there are 3 graves marked with flat stones at the head and feet, buried on the James Carlisle farmland. Now we have Amos Goudy II. He was the eldest son of Amos and Mercy, and he was born in York on October 8, 1744. He is said to have settled on his father's homestead and was a man of prominence in the town of Bristol in Lincoln County. He was a soldier of the Revolution, serving as 2nd lieutenant in the 3rd Company from Lincoln County in a regiment of the Massachusetts Militia. His commission is dated May 23, 1780. He married Sarah Clark of Bristol in February of 1766. They had 9 children, 2 sons and 7 daughters. He built a house in Clark's Cove at the bottom of the hill near the mill pond. He was described as a large man of brawny, portly built, and absolutely fearless. He was candid when under composure, but a dangerous man to impose upon. He served as sheriff of Lincoln County around 1788 and was the first sheriff to carry out a sentence for capital punishment by hanging in Lincoln County against a John O'Neill, who was convicted of murder in 1788. It appears from the records we have found that he was well liked as a sheriff. The following was taken from the History of Old Bristol, Bremen, and Penfield by John Johnson. The sheriff of the county at this time, whose duty it was to execute the sentence of death upon O'Neill, was Amos Goudy. He was a man of much intelligence and firmness, and according to tradition, credibly performed the painful duty of conducting the first execution in Lincoln County. Record indicates that Amos Goudy must have inherited the grist mill from his father, because in 1804 he sold 1/2 of the Goudy mill privilege to Marius Howe for $350. Sometime before 1818, Amos and his son John Goudy built at a sawmill near where the grist mill was located. We do not have the exact date, but we have a document a document record in Lincoln County that states in May of 1818, Amos and John Goudy sold 1/4 interest in a sawmill to Aaron Blaney that had been recently erected by Amos and John Goudy. Amos Goudy's name appears often in records regarding the sale of real estate. It appears he bought and sold many tracts of land up and down the Damerscott River. Town records in 1796 show that he owned a house and 200 acres of land in Bristol. Family stories say that once he got drunk and was thrown from his horse while riding home and fractured his hip, which caused him to walk with a cane for the remainder of his life. It is said that the story is written in the family Bible as a warning to others to avoid doing this. He died in June 1824 at 79 years old. His wife Sarah died in February 1834 at the age of 89 years old. They're buried in Kerry Cemetery. Next in line is John Goudy, who is the youngest son of Amos and Sarah. He built his home on the Ridge Road that is owned by Charles Holmes, next to Don Kerrigan. John and Elizabeth had 9 children, 5 boys and 3 girls. We have not been able to find much on John and Elizabeth. He appeared to have worked as a farmer and was his father in the sawmill they owned. On an important side note, one of John and Elizabeth's sons, Captain James Harvey Goudy, made his fortune as a master mariner, sailing to Africa for trade in tobacco, gold dust, ivory, and other commodities. Records do not indicate he was ever part of the slave trade. When he returned home to stay, his father deeded him his property. In 1876, he began the construction of the Centennial Hall, which is the original town hall on the corner of Ridge Road and Clark's Cove. Today it serves as the Walpole Fire Department. It originally housed a general store and a post office on the first floor and a community hall on the second floor. In 1951 or 1952, it also housed one of the town's schools for a time. The Ridge Road at one time was called Goudy Ridge because several homes on the ridge were owned by members of the family. John died in November of 1860 at 75 years old. His wife Elizabeth died in January 1882 at 91 years old. They're buried in Kerry Cemetery. Now my dad is going to take over to go over the next several generations of Goudys.
Tough act, Paul.
Huh?
Tough act, Paul.
There it is. All right, next in line is Timothy Fitch Goudy. He was the 4th son of John and Elizabeth Goudy. He was born on December 10th, 1818 in Bristol. He married Mary Hatch of Bristol on October 15, 1839. They had 11 children, 5 sons and 6 daughters. His occupation was listed as a farmer. We've not been able to find the location of their homestead. Timothy and his son, John, were both in the Civil War at the same time. He mustered in December 14, 1861, at 42 years old, as a private in the 2nd Battalion Mounted Artillery, Hall's Division. He was discharged for disability on January 30th, 1863. We are in the process of tracing his movements in this battery to determine what his disability was and where he was hurt. He died on April 15, 1865, at age 46. His wife, Mary, died December 4th, 1857, at age 38. They are both buried in the Harrington Cemetery. Next, we have John Goudy again. He's the eldest son of Timothy and Mary. He was born in Bristol in April of 1840. He married his first wife, Lucy Gambage of Bristol, on April 14, 1861. They had 2 sons and 2 daughters. John's occupation was listed as a farmer. John enlisted in the Union Army twice during the Civil War. The first time he enlisted in Company I, 21st Maine Infantry, on October 14, 1862, and mustered out August 25, 1863. During this enlistment, he served in Port Hudson, Louisiana. He was part of the 38-day siege of Port Hudson, May 22nd, 63 to July 9th of 1863. This battle was the final engagement of the Union Army to recapture the Mississippi River. His second enlistment was on November 14, 1863, with the 7th Maine Light Artillery as a cannoneer. During this enlistment, he was in Augusta until the morning of February 1st, 1864, when they left for Washington, D.C., arriving 4 days later on February 5th. Their battery was assigned to the Army's 9th Corps under General Burnside. On April 25th, 1864, they broke camp in Washington and started for the front lines. On May 6, 1864, the company was engaged in the Battle of the Wilderness. On May 9th, they were involved in the Battle of Spotsylvania. On May 23, 1864, the battery again moved, this time to North Anna River, and was once again engaged in battle. On the night of June 1st, 1864, the battery was ordered to move to Bethesda Church. Fighting here continued for 3 days. On the afternoon of June 4th, the battery was ordered to move to Cold Harbor. On June 16th, they moved to Petersburg and were there for a 9-month siege and was a witness to the explosion of Burnside's mine, known today as the Crater. This battery was in pursuit of Lee's army and was about 8 miles from Appomattox when Lee surrendered. He stayed with the battery until they mustered out on June 10, 1865 in Augusta. He received a monthly pension of $6 for disability caused by a broken leg while on duty in Washington, D.C. in April of '64. On a side note, up here in the shadow box, you'll see 2 pieces of the apple tree under which Lee surrendered at Appomattox. And these were brought home by Elbridge Bryant, who was a sergeant under Joshua Chamberlain in the 20th Maine. His daughter, Anna, would later marry Dana Goudy, John's son. This is also the Bible he carried through the Civil War. John's first wife, Lucy, died on January 10, 1873. John remarried two more times after Lucy died, but had no more children. John died April 13, 1910 in Damascus, where he lived with his third wife, Sarah Hastings, whom he married in March of 1893. John, Lucy, and his second wife, Jenny, are buried in the West Bristol Cemetery. Next is Dana Goudy, who was born in August 1865 in Bristol. He married Anna Bryant of Bristol in September 1892. They had one son, Linwood Bryant Goudy. Dana's occupation was a farmer. Dana and his father, John, bought the Meadowbrook Farm on Route 129 in Walpole, together in 1885 or 86 for $800. Dana bought his father's half from him when he married Annie in 1892 for $250. John continued to live with Dana and Annie until he remarried. The Meadowbrook Farm was built in 1875, an old house which set up on top of the hill south of where it is now. This hill was removed when they dug out gravel there. It was then moved to where it is now and was rebuilt by George Triggs and George Richards, who planned this to be the L on a main house they were to build, but this was never done. They sold it to Robert and Andrew Hanley, who rented it to Frank and Ella Weeks, then to Frank and Nancy Hammond, who had 2 small children. It was then rented to Charles and Abby Hughley, and then finally to Frank, Mary, and his wife, before they sold it to John and Dana. We don't have much on the early life of Dana and Annie. It appears they led a typical farmer's life. We do have diaries starting in 1937 from their daughter-in-law, Elta Kelsey Goudy, that talk of daily life on the farm, which we'll get to shortly. Annie died in October of '41 at 61 years old. Dana passed away suddenly in February of 49 of a heart attack. He was 84 years old. Then we come to my great-grandfather, Linwood Goudy. He was born in Bristol in 1894. He was the only child of David and Anna. He lived his whole life on Meadowbrook Farm except when he was in the Army during World War I. He married Elta Kelsey in December of 1916, and they had one daughter, Virginia, Esther Goudy. During World War II, he was in the 303rd Field Artillery. He was trained in Fort Devens before being sent to France. Bertha, as he was known in the neighborhood, worked as a farmer. They raised dairy cattle, he worked in the woods, he cut hay for people, hauled manure, cut ice in Clark's Cove. He pretty much did it all. He owned one of the first trucks that used to haul gravel from Walpole that was shoveled on and off by hand. He was a selectman in the town of South Bristol for many years, and also worked on it at improving the roads. He took great pride in the landscaping and upkeep of the Meadowbrook farm that was left to him by his father Dana. Those who remember him will often comment on how meticulous he was about cutting his lawn and his hatred of dandelions. Many times he was spotted on his hands and knees digging up the offending weed until he was 98 years old. I was lucky to spend a lot of time at the farm. We visited my grandparents and great-grandparents several times a week. When Bertha heard BeeBee and I were getting married, he offered us the piece of property our house sits on today as a wedding present. My wife and I made almost daily visits to Bertha. Most weekends, if I was cutting wood, I would take my lunch to the farm and spend the time listening to his stories. Most days, Gary Fitch would stop by also, and most evenings, and Bruce and Judy Farron and their boys would stop in to see me. Now I'm going to hand it over to my wife, BeeBee. And the funny thing is, my great-grandfather never knew what her name was. He always called her Dee Dee. So here you go, Dee Dee.
Well, before we begin talking about the diaries, I'll give you a little bit of background about myself. I am not from here. I was born and raised in Jefferson, which I always thought that meant I was from here until I moved to South Bristol and learned I was from away. My family on my dad's side were one of the founders of Woolwich. And then my grandfather on my father's side came directly from Massachusetts, so I guess that puts me from away. On my mother's side, they came from New York, and they settled up in Flagstaff. They moved to Jefferson in 1950 when they flooded Flagstaff, the town. They took the money and moved down to Jefferson. So that's just a little bit of history about where I'm from. So on to Alta's diaries. Some of you may have known Grandma Goudy, as she was fondly called by everyone in the neighborhood. I unfortunately never got to meet her, as she died about 6 years before I started dating Mike. But we have been fortunate to have been handed down her diaries, among other things. The ones we have start in 1937, and they go through April 22nd of 1980. She passed away on June 24th of 1980, so that in itself is pretty amazing that she kept them. She pretty much wrote every day, and during harvest season or whatnot, it was a little quiet, but so these diaries have been amazing to read over and to be able to get a sense of what her daily life was like. So I've picked out a few of the days. Some were very normal. Wednesday, February 3rd, 19 degrees, then up to 35 degrees, crocheted most all day. Monday, March 11th, 1940, town meeting day. Cold and windy, small crowd out. We made $23.95 on dinner. So, Tuesday, March 24th, 1945, cleaned the kitchen cupboards today. Some of the other entries are much more telling of the times. Friday, January 9th, 1942. Bought another defense bond today and some more stamps. Have $5.25 in nickels towards another bond. Sunday, February 8th, 1942. We turn our clocks ahead an hour tonight for wartime until the duration. April 17th, 1942. Linwood on duty at Air Raid Observation Post from 10 to 12 p.m. Monday, May 11th, 1942. L went up to schoolhouse after he got home from work and got his ration card for gasoline. Thursday, August 27th. I went down to the observation post this afternoon, but there were no planes to report. Came home from South Bristol tonight with just our parking lights. It looks odd without street lights and all the curtains drawn. She also kept track of important family and town events in her diaries. Saturday, March 14th, 1942. Virginia is not feeling good today. After supper, Ad and I took her to the hospital. Sat in the car a while, then I went with her while Ad waited downstairs. I stayed with her until 1 o'clock, then they took her to the delivery room, and I went down with Ad. Baby Marie came at 2:15 a.m. Everything is okay. This is the birth of my mother-in-law, Marie Sandra McFarland. This one made us all chuckle. April 11th, 1945. Uncovered flower beds and raked the lawn, killed a hen and drowned a cat. Let's call it a day. She was quite a woman, I guess. December 15th, 1945. Ad home from Okinawa. That would have been Marie's father. February 17th, 1949. Electric lights were turned on a year ago today. Tuesday, September 15th, 1970. Gin in at 8 a.m., that would have been Virginia, her daughter, said Marie had gone to the hospital. A long day for us to wait the news. Fred came in about 8 p.m. and said they have a boy, 7 pounds, 9 ounces, at 3:15 this afternoon, and both are doing all right. This would have been the birth of Michael. She also had quite a sense of humor, even right up to a few months before she died. March 24th, 1980. Linwood went on the garbage truck with Fred today. Marie came down. I heard on TV about something you squirt up your nose and it brings your memory back. But darn it, I have forgotten the name of it. She was also known for her hand-churned butter that she sold all over the area. In the back of most of her diaries, there are pounds, the number of pounds she churned that year. For example, in 1945, she made 1,040 pounds of butter that year, which she sold around. I have enjoyed reading them, and there is so much more that I could share. Please feel free to look at them. There may be even something in there regarding your family. We're now going to turn this over to Marie, and she's going to share some stories of what she remembers with her grandparents and great-grandparents and her mother and father, and a little bit about the McFarlands.
Yeah, my grandmother had a lot of humor in those diaries. I haven't read them for many years, and movie brought some things I don't remember seeing. But before I forget it, she made butter in a big old oak churn, like a barrel, and it had a handle on it, set in a cradle. You turn the handle to get the butter to pound out right from the cream. Well, one day she was doing her thing and had a plug in the bottom of it. Well, the plug came out and she made 2 complete revolutions. There was cream down. All the way around again. Was she really? That was a mess. I do remember that. So that was just kind of one of the funny things that happened down there. A lot of funny things did happen down there anyway. For instance, how many of you have lived in a 2-generation house? Okay. How about a 3-generation house? How about a 4-generation house? That's what I was brought up in. It was a 4-generation house. My parents and myself, and then Linwood and Alta, my grandparents, and then Dana and Annie, my well, just Dana. Annie died 3 months before I was born. But Dana was my great-grandfather. He was stone deaf and had to communicate to him by writing. Therefore, BeeBee's got some papers here that I don't remember ever seeing before. When I was 5 years old, where I had written my name in cursive. I like to do that. And just and some math problems that I did at age 6 and all that. But he was deaf, and he taught me all those things before I even went to school, which was kind of different, you know. And then I went up to Gladstone with some of the people that are here now. But that was just, I had never seen those papers. I don't know where they've been stashed away.
In the diaries.
Oh, in the diaries, okay, good. But anyway, the house has been alluded to before. I was about 6 years old and we got electricity. We had what they call a Delco plant in the cellar, which was a series of batteries that were hooked together. And you could turn on a few lights with them. And I don't remember the exact number. But if you were going to go upstairs to go to bed and wanted to turn the light on upstairs, you had to shut one off downstairs because it would overload the generator. My grandmother didn't like that because you have to go down the cellar and do I don't know what to make it run again. But that was just the way it was. We had a hand-dug well in the backyard, not an artesian well like we have today. And it would always run dry in the middle of the summer. And we had a hand pump in the kitchen, which would always freeze up in the winter. So then we had running water. We would take a toboggan in big containers and we would run down the hill where we and that's on the road. I mean, that's just the way it was. But that spring had the most beautiful water in it. Had a wood stove, big old wood stove. And in the kitchen and in the living room, one of those belly stoves things that I don't remember this, but I remember my mother and grandmother telling me about when I was 3 years old. I put both hands on it. And I guess I had to wear bandages for weeks and weeks and weeks while they healed. I don't remember, thank goodness. But I do remember taking one of my stuffed toys, an pink elephant, and his butt got burned on that stove. Oh, that was strange. I told him I was going to do some really strange things. Of course, having no running water, we didn't have any indoor plumbing, and we were fortunate because most of my friends that had outdoor facilities had to go through the snow and everything in the wintertime. We were fortunate because our outhouse was in the corner of the barn, and the barn was attached to the house. So all we did was just walk through the barn to get out to the bathroom. And you didn't tear it on in the wintertime. Actually, our school was like that too, wasn't it, Sandra? We had several ponds on the property there, and one of them had enough ice in it every winter that my grandfather would cut that ice. And he had built a large ice house in the backyard, and he would cut that ice, pack it solid in sawdust. And we always had enough ice to last us all through the summer. There's no electricity, we used an ice box, which is still in use today. Our daughter Lynette has got it in her kitchen. It's a big old oak, and it's lined with lead and covered with enamel on the interior, and that enamel has not even got a chip in it. It's just a beautiful specimen, it really is. It's kind of neat, she uses it to store whatever in. But anyway, those are some of the things. And then we used to skate, didn't we, Sandra? Out on one of the ponds out back. And my grandfather ice skated with us. He had little ice skates that you clamped onto the bottom of a shoe. And he skated with us until he was about 75 years old. And he was an incredible skater, and graceful, really, really a wonderful skater. I remember stories, I don't even have this written down, but anyway, stories of him skating. You know where the Sproul Road is? Walpole, across from the farm that I grew up in. Anyway, out and back there, from the Sproul Road, almost up to, used to be George Houston's, but anyway, halfway to Damascata was all cranberry bog. And it would freeze over in the wintertime, and they would ice skate almost all to Damascata from Walpole. And that's one of those things that just come flying through the hand. And to keep warm out on that ice pond when we used to go skating, this would be horrible today, but you know, we always had a huge bonfire. Made of tires. And we lived through it. And then we'd go in and our feet would be so cold, and Grammy would open up the oven door on the big old wood stove, and we'd sit in front of it and warm our feet, and the chilblains would come out, and the feet would just be frozen. And she would make hot chocolate and popcorn. And that's all the neighborhood kids. I only see one here now that used to join me there, but we used to have big ice skating parties, didn't we? It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. Good memories. We always had work horses, if you see some of these pictures, great big old horses. And to this day, I still have never been on a horse. Because they were definitely just work horses. My grandfather didn't let anyone ride them or anything. They just used them for cutting the hay, raking the hay. And I remember raking the hay and pitching it into the big old hay wagon. And even as a kid, I used to tramp it down to get more hay in, you know, just that sort of thing. My grandfather also had cattle until he was in his late 70s. And then he decided maybe it was time to get rid of them. So he did, and then he was kind of bored, so he bought a book on caning chairs. And he learned to cane chairs, and I wish I had the number that he did, but it was in the hundreds of chairs that he did for people in the neighborhood. And he let them pay for the caning. He did to keep his mind occupied. And that's, you've got a bunch of them, and that's got a bunch of them. Everyone in the family has got some of those chairs. And I know a lot of people in the neighborhood have got them too. Also, another little more odd thing here was the Gladstone School. So there's a picture over there with school teacher Sarah Emery when I went there. She taught for 47 years, well, over 40 years. But she had one room, 8 grades, no running water, no heat, except a potbelly stove in the middle. And there again, the 7th and 8th grade boys would run up to Koch's apple orchard, to their house. They had running water, and they'd go up with buckets and come back and pour it in this big ceramic jug that had a tin dipper that we all used. Yeah. And the only reason I mention that school because my great-grandfather, my grandmother, my mother, and myself all went to that same school. Mike mentioned about the lawn with my grandfather. He was so meticulous. He would be down on his hands and knees at 97, 98 years old, digging those foolish dandelions out. And one day, down by the road at the end of the barn, there's a kind of a gutter there, and he was only 97 then. He was mowing there, and he rolled the riding lawnmower on top of himself. And no one, because there's not a lot of traffic on 129, and so finally Peter Burr, who lived down near the Four Corners, happened to go by and saw him. And he jumped out and cut the tractor off of him. And he got my grandfather stood up, and he says, "Linwood, let me take you up to the hospital to check out, make sure you haven't broken anything." My grandfather said, "No way, I got a lot more lawn I got to finish." That is the kind of personality he was. By the way, he lived within just a few months of being 100. And BeeBee was a big help in taking care of him the last couple of years that he was alive. Yeah, that was interesting. But anyway, that's sort of my little odds and ends on the galleys. So, want to throw anything in on more on the Goudy? You want to throw in anything else? Okay. So I'll just go real briefly through the McFarlands. Most of you know or have known some McFarlands from this area. My third great-great-grandfather was Captain William Madison. He was born in 1775. He died in 1866 at age 91. He married Abigail Robinson. They lived for a while in the Bristol Mills Post Office. He's listed as a farmer. He's buried in South Bristol. I'm not sure. I think he may be down at Farms Cove. Anyway, I'm not going into the whole detail of his wife, but her family traces back to 1673, and they had arrived from Stirling Shore, Scotland. And then my second great-great-grandfather was Captain William Madison McFarland. And he was lost at sea in Pensacola at age 40. He was married. And I really can't find anything. I assume that maybe he was like what would be a merchant marine or something. I really don't know. Whatever. I don't have any real history on him. So then we go to my great-grandfather, and his name was William Madison McFarland. No imagination. He was born in 1840 and lived to be 88. He married Anna Marie Young from Matinicus. Matinicus is a little island off the shore here. But they lived down in Farms Cove in what is now, was owned by Ann Ramsey.
Yeah.
Is it still?
Father's daughter.
They lived down in Farms Cove, and across from their house is a cemetery that's got a bunch of McFarlands, and they're all related to me somehow. Anyway, I remember she lived to be 103. My great-grandmother. And I remember her. She died when I was a little over 3.5 years old, and I honestly can picture her, not just from pictures, but from going to her house and seeing the big old wood cook stove, and I don't know what she was making, but she had a big kettle on her stove, and she was stirring that thing and just stirring a little soup, or I don't know. But I have vivid memory of seeing her before she died. And also she made a quilt for me and my cousin, who's a few months older, as I like to remind him, he isn't here tonight. But anyway, she made it. It was made with tiny triangles, like a patchwork quilt, and it was all hand done. And she was 100 when she made that. Those two quilts. I still have it somewhere. And that's next, and that's his too. But that's such intricate work for someone 100 years old to be able to do that. It's kind of cool. So yeah, that was my great-grandfather. So then we go to my grandfather, and his name was Frank. And he was born 1876 and died in 1951. So I remember him, I was 9 when he passed away. And he married Gertrude Carter out of Newcastle, and her family is connected with the Carters who built ships in Newcastle. After the selective service was started, he registered in May of 1917, which would have made him like 42 years old, and they never did take him. So he never went into service. He was a boat builder. He did some repairs on houses too, but his famous for him boats were the Defiance and the Dauntless 1 and Dauntless 2. And they used to run from Christmas Cove to Mohegan and from Christmas Cove to Booth Bay and back. And on that sign, that was for Dauntless 2. It was 50 cents round trip to go to Booth Bay Harbor. And I remember going with him on numerous occasions. We always went down to their house on Sundays. And he would let me ride with him to go to Booth Bay. And he'd let me, the old steering wheel probably wasn't as big because I was probably pretty little, but he'd let me steer. He'd always right behind me, of course. But yeah, so I had some good memories there of being associated with that. But he built a lot of boats. He built his first boat when he was 12. It was like a skiff. But so did you. You was 13, right? Because he was one of the 8th grade students down here. Yeah. But the final count that I ever seen documented anyway was that he built 53 boats. And he built everything from those that were about 40 feet long. And there again, my cousin, who's not here, he's up in Canada fishing. He was supposed to send me he's got the original registration state of Maine for that second Thomas. It gave the tonnage, it gave the engine full bit, so someday I'll get my hands on it. But he built 53, first one 12, and built 53. And he always made what do they call it? It's like a half model for a ship. And the whole wall was boat shop. And if you've done Christmas Cove, there's Winks Way, and you look up in there, there's a big boat shop that stands there every day. And he had those models, those half models, and he drafted all the boats that he built from those models that he carved for himself. Pretty clever guy. Let's see. Then they would take the boats out. This one picture, I don't know if it's here or not, the dog was just coming out of the shop, just yet. Well, one's coming out of but anyway, this one's somewhere, but they're coming out of the shop down there, and that is 40 feet long. And what they do, they would be in the cradle, and then they would tow it somehow. I don't even know how they did it. And then when they take it down to launch it, I can remember both my grandmothers and my aunts all saving their cooking Crisco in the water in cans, and that's what they greased the waves with and launched those. It's a little different from today. Pat remembers that, because her father was one of them that helped out too. Yeah, her father, Uncle Pete, worked with my grandfather building boats, and my other uncle, Winthrop, who I call Uncle Upper, I don't know why, but the three, they worked together building boats down there. And then we go to my father, and his name was William Addison, better known as Addison. I guess it was because they'd had so many William Addisons that my grandmother decided that he would go by his middle name, sort of like Michael does too. He's Fred Michael, but he goes by Mike. And my father was born in 1914 and passed away in 2001. Married Virginia Goudy in 1938, and she passed away just 2 years ago at age 97. Yeah. My father served in the Navy from December 1943 through December 1945 during World War II. He was on a destroyer in the South Pacific. He was a CMI, and I had no idea. I'm not familiar with Navy terms to know what it means. I was going to look it up. So, but anyway, I remember him talking about being there for Okinawa. It was attacked Midway and Guam, and some of the other islands in that chain. So that was, and I know, there's a beautiful cemetery called Punch Bowl in Hawaii, and it's in the center of a crater. And in the back of it, it's like an amphitheater, and all around this huge amphitheater is mosaics of every battle in the South Pacific done, and lists all the ships that were there and the dates. And I took pictures of each of those panels and brought them home to him a couple of years before he passed away. He was so excited to see that. He said, "Oh, I was there. You know? So that was kind of a neat thing. And it's a beautiful Punch Bowl Cemetery. Hawaii, you need to go see that. Right back. Another thing my father did, besides helping us, he didn't really work on building the boats as much as Pete and Winthrop did. But was your father in the coal business with him? Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So Uncle Pete and my father had a coal business where they would go to the railroad up in Newcastle, where the coal would come in trains, and they loaded into their dump trucks. They had those big shuttle things that people would have to put down in their basements, run it out through into the basement and all that. And they did that for many, many years. And there was a big coal shed down there. The boathouse is up at the top of the driveway. Down behind it is was the coal shed. That's where they stored the coal. because my father also was a caretaker for many cottages, especially Christmas Cove. And he built a number of houses here in South Bristol too, over the years. So that's just kind of a quick sketch. I have a lot more information. I don't have to be doing this. So anyway, and I think Brian, he done a great job putting all this together. It's a lot of research. I believe that it's accurate from what I heard from my ancestors. So I'm pretty thankful. Thank you all for coming. Just one more. Young people who here talk to your elders about their ancestry, the type of work they did, what they did for entertainment, and how things were when they were growing up. And those people who are my age, talk to the young people and share your experiences. Write them down so your family history will be saved to future generations like my grandmother did. And pass it along to the Ryans of the world.
Good advice. Thank you. That was a fascinating presentation from 3 generations going way back also. And if you have questions, I'm sure they'll be happy to answer. And there's a lot to look at here. So thank you all for being here, and we'll see you in July, I hope.